So what we always need to ask ourselves is, how do my customers, clients, patients, what have you, how do they value through what I do? Both intrinsically in terms of the product or service or whatever you provide, but also through that extra that you bring to the table. If they cannot distinguish between any two or more providers, they're always going to go with who has the lowest price or fee. Again, that's human nature. When you sell on low price, you're a commodity. When you sell on high value, you're a resource.
It seems like it occurred in another lifetime, but only 4 short months ago, the economy was roaring. We were enjoying the greatest economy the nation, and in fact the world, had ever known. Business was booming, record sales were being booked, and profits were exploding. The economy, in fact, was so good that even those who the marketplace would consider average, people that the marketplace would not see as influential or persuasive, were doing very, very well. I'm Ken Newhouse. To me, building a profitable business isn't only about generating leads and driving sales. It's about who we are and what we're made of. I succeed in business by finding the most effective client attraction methods and find the most effective client attraction methods to succeed in business. Join us on the quest as we search for the newest and most effective methods you can use to get clients now. Hey everybody, Ken Newhouse here, and I want to welcome you to this episode of the Get Clients Now podcast. And with me today, we've got Mr. Bob Burg, best-selling author of like a bazillion books, originally The Go-Giver. Today we're going to be talking about the Go-Giver influencer. So Bob, on behalf of myself and the members of the Get Clients Now Nation, I want to welcome you to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Dr. Ken. Thank you for having me.
And I want to send out a special thanks to Mitch for recommending that I get in contact with you. Mitch is a really good guy. So
Mitch Jackson is just one of the all-time greatest. Just fantastic.
He is. He's a really good guy, and he gave me a really good interview, and he delivered super awesome value for the members of the Get Clients Now Nation. So I am forever indebted to him. He's a super cool guy and a lawyer, first lawyer I've ever had on my show. But speaking of the books you've written, and most recently the book Go-Giver Influencer, looking back on, before you actually started with Go-Giver, how did all this come about? How did this come into your mind to write this first book and then go on to write the book that you've written?
Well, years ago, I had a book out called Endless Referrals, which the subtitle was Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales. And it was really for entrepreneurs, salespeople, and professionals. We had a lot of lawyers and accountants and dentists that utilized it because it was really all about, that it's great to have a product or service or be just fantastic at a certain skill set. But if you don't feel comfortable with the process of going out and creating the relationships that really lead to both direct business and referral business, it's very tough to sustain a very successful and fulfilling business or practice. So really, it was Endless Referrals was simply a how-to, and it was how to create those relationships that would lead to people feeling good about you. They would know you, they'd like you, they'd trust you, they'd want to do business with you if that was appropriate, and refer you to others.
In March of 2020, the growth, the prosperity, the record profits came to a grinding halt. The economy faltered. Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed their doors permanently. Travel restrictions were put in place, and many of the people we call clients, customers, and patients simply stopped spending money.
But it was, a typical how to do it book. It was the system, really. Throughout the years, though, I'd always read a lot of business parables and always enjoyed them, always got a lot from them. They're stories. And as you know, stories connect with people on a heart level. And from there, it's much easier to either take in that information if you're the reader or transmit that information if you're the author. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could take that basic premise of Endless Referrals, that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust, and put it in a parable form. So entitling it was basically a matter of asking the question, what is the essence of those who are able to both quickly and sustainably create those know, like, and trust relationships? And the answer is they're always giving. They're giving value to others. Their focus is on giving value to others. And so coming up with the title was the easy part. The best thing I did for the book, though, was asking John David Mann to be the lead writer and co-author and storyteller, because he's a fantastic writer. I'm a how-to person. I'm step 1, step 2, step 3. So it was good collaboration. But that's really how that started. And it was really to kind of put into story form the basic essence of Endless Referral.
So based on the fact that you're like the influence guy, here's my question. How does one become influential?
Well, it's a great question. It's probably the most important question, because to be able to influence is so vitally important to one's success and the difference they can make in the world.
Unlike a typical recession, your business now faces the added challenge of trying to operate profitably in the middle of a recession that's occurring in the heart of a worldwide pandemic. In addition to innumerable restrictions and regulations that you have to comply with, it's now much more difficult to generate sales. As a result, your competitors, and perhaps you as well, push even harder to drive business and generate sales. But the effect of pushing harder often has the opposite effect. Pushing prospects harder makes them more resistant to your marketing and sales communications. A vicious cycle ensues, and sales slump even further.
So let's look at first what influence really is. And so if we can define influence very basically, simply as the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. By definition, that's influence. It's the definition, but it's not its substance or its essence. The essence of influence is pull. Pull as opposed to push. We've all heard the saying, how far can you push a rope, right? And we know the answer is not very far, or at least not very fast or very effectively, which is why great influencers don't push. You don't hear people saying, wow, that David or that Nancy, she is so influential. She has a lot of push with people. No, she's influential. She has a lot of pull with people. That's what influence is. It's pull. It's an attraction. So great influencers, that they don't push their ideas on others. They don't push their will on others. They're not push-y. No, they pull. So, but how? How does that actually manifest itself? And how do they do this? Well, first, I think the great influencers, what John David Mann and I call genuine influencers, I think that on a very, both a head and a heart level, they understand what I believe was Dale Carnegie's underlying premise in his classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And this is where he wrote that ultimately people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. It's human nature, and it's so imperative that we understand that. Now, with that in mind, that genuine influencer, they ask themselves questions to make sure they're facing the right direction. So how does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their goals? How does it align with their needs, their wants, their desires? How does what I want this other person to do, how does it align with their values? What problems am I helping them to solve? How am I making their life better just by being part of it? And when we ask ourselves these questions, thoughtfully, intelligently, genuinely, authentically, not as a way to manipulate another human being into doing our will, but as a way of building everyone in the process, now we've come a lot closer to earning that person's commitment, as opposed to trying to depend on some type of compliance, which is, manipulation, intimidation, force, threat, and so forth. And of course, that commitment is so much more effective. And so that's really what we mean by pull. And it starts by moving from an I focus or me focus to an other focus.
Yeah, that's good, especially if you have any desire for back-end sales. If you do the persuasion as in force, push, manipulate, cajole, pressure, you may very well get the sale on the front end. but there's a very good likelihood you're not going to get retention. Your retention numbers are going to be horrible. So
we call that manipulation. And manipulation, it's not that you can't have a short-term success. You can. But as you said, very, very difficult, because once somebody feels manipulated by you, they're going to do their best to avoid any further manipulation, maybe any further contact with you. And even in the present, they may do their best to sort of sabotage what they've agreed to.
Yeah, even if you sold them a really good product or an awesome service, once they realize that you have actually manipulated them, that destroys, you've just destroyed trust. And once it's gone, it's really incredibly difficult. You could spend a lifetime creating a reputation and destroy it within minutes when you lose someone's trust. In looking at your book, Go Giver Influencer, from a 30,000 foot level, just a question I had, just being curious, why did you write it? And if you could kind of give us a broad picture, 30,000 foot level, what's it about?
Sure. We wrote it because remember, in The Go Giver, the original book in the series, law number 3 was the law of influence, which said your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. And of course, when we say other people's interests first, we don't mean in a way that you're anyone's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial. It's simply understanding that, as Joe learned from several of the mentors in the story, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And there's no better, faster, more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you from others than by, again, making your win all about their win. So it's actually very, very practical.
You know that you're smart. You know that you're a hard worker, and you realize that simply pushing harder isn't going to work. Pushing harder is not the solution to creating sustainable profitability in your business right now. So if pushing harder isn't working, in fact, it's making things worse, what's the solution? What's going to help you attract more prospects and make more sales? The secret can be found in the word attract, meaning that the solution you've been searching for is this. Learning how to be persuasive and influential is the key to your success, meaning that by learning how to persuade and influence, by learning how to pull prospects toward you with your messaging so that you can be seen as a trustworthy guide, is the secret to surviving and thriving in the heart of this recession and pandemic.
When I speak at sales conferences, Dr. Ken, I'll often begin by saying, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet, right? They're not going to buy from you because you need the money or even because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy from you only because they believe they'll be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And in the basically free market economy in which we operate, when I say free market, I simply mean no one is forced to do business with you, okay, free market. That's the only reason why anyone should buy from you or from me or from anyone else, because they believe they'll benefit. This is great, though. It means that if you really want to influence, if you want to move that person to the correct action, your focus must be on them. It must be on bringing immense value to them, which is why we say that money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder to values lightning, okay? So this is why we wrote Genuine Influence. We really wanted to take law number 3 and drive it very, very deep so that there was no question that as you're looking to influence another human being, that you make it all about how you can make their lives better and at the same time get the results that you're looking for. Now, we also, even though it's a business book and the main story is business, we've also felt as though in many ways, the world right now is, we're certainly going through this in our country, in the United States, that there's such a division with people who are not communicating with each other. They're not influencing each other, the two sides, if you will. All they're doing is yelling at each other. And, I like to say the difference in political discourse now compared to as it was even maybe 20, 25 years ago, it used to be that, it used to be politically, I'm right, you're wrong. Now, that was never ideal, but it was manageable because if you believe that you're right and the other person's wrong, you'll engage with them because you want to hopefully persuade them to your side of the issue. It was, I'm right, you're wrong. Now it's, I'm right, you're evil. That's entirely different, because if you believe someone is evil, you will not engage them. Why would you engage someone who's evil? They're beyond redemption. There's nothing right. And if you're trying to engage with someone who feels that you believe they're evil, well, they're not going to engage with you. Why would they? So while it was a business story, because it's a business publisher, we also kind of just wanted people to get the idea of what real influence was about. And we would say this, and when you say, what's it really, really about? Genuine influence is getting the results you want when dealing with others in such a way that not only do both of you come away better off afterwards, but that the other person feels genuinely good about themselves, about the situation, and about you.
Bob, given that this is, in my estimation, obviously in yours, this is obvious, no pun intended for repeating that, but taking this approach is like, it makes sense. Why is it then, with so many people teaching influence and persuasion methodologies, that we have so many people who are struggling to be influential? What do you think, if you could just kind of funnel it down to a common denominator, what do you think it is about people in general where they're just not able to influence other people successfully? As an example, let's say that they genuinely want to provide value to the other person. They genuinely want to have that other person's interest, their best interest at heart, the prospective client or customer, patient, whoever it might be. Why is it that they're struggling to actually engage with that person in such a way that they can provide value to that person? Is it mostly on the buyer side, the prospect side, or is it mostly the failure to influence coming from the side of the person who's trying to do the influencing?
Well, it's always the responsibility of the communicator to communicate correctly. You know, if you're an archer and you're at an archery range, right, and you have a target in front of you, and you draw back the bow, and you miss, it isn't the target's fault. Okay, it's always the responsibility of the communicator to communicate effectively. So, in answer to your excellent question, then why do so many people have an issue with that? Well, I think it's human nature. Yes, we do want to benefit the person who we're dealing with, but we are self-focused in many ways. And that's part of human nature that is the result of the back in the cave person days, right? When self-preservation was right, every day was a matter of surviving the day. It was literally life and death, not figuratively, right? And so you had that self-interest. And while we don't have that same life and death issue now, I think
it almost feels like it, though. At some point,
it often does.
Right now, it does. I mean, literally, for a lot of people who aren't working, or
that's true. Yeah,
that it could feel like, not to interrupt you, but go ahead and continue with your thought.
No, that's a good point. And here's the thing, Dr. Ken, and this is why where it's even more important.
Genuine influencers understand that people, especially prospects, do things for their reasons, not your reasons. Imagine that I give you a rope and ask you to move a heavy object. Are you going to have better success using the rope to push the object? Or are you going to have greater success when you use the rope to pull the object to the place you want it to go? Now, more than ever, using methods that pull prospects toward you, which is called being influential, is the key to your success.
If you're either looking for a job or looking for that sale or looking to engage, it's very natural to make it about you because you're desperate. You need it, right? And now but remember, they're not going to do business with you for your reasons, but for their reasons. Now, I'm not saying to forego your self-interest. That would be denying human nature, okay? No, you don't have to deny it or forego it. You do need to put it to the side. You need to temporarily suspend your self-interest, just like you would go into a theater to watch a movie. I mean, it's not real what you're seeing on the screen. I mean, you see words going up on a silver screen as it starts. There's music playing. You recognize the actors. You may have gone because you enjoyed those actors in other story. You know it's not real. You know that Bruce Willis isn't cracking a joke as when a terrorist has a gun pointed at his head. It would never happen. Okay, but in order to enjoy the story and feel the emotion and the joy and the pain and the hope, we willingly and temporarily suspend our disbelief. Okay, here I'm going to say willingly and temporarily suspend your self-interest and make sure your focus is on what value are you bringing to the other person.
Yeah, I think that's a discipline that a lot of people simply...
Yeah, it is a discipline.
It's a discipline. You have to work at it. You have to really work at it. And I'm sure you have tools and ways to help people do that, in addition to your books, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. But as it relates to the content of the book, what did you like most about writing it? And what did you like least?
Well, what I always like most about writing anything that I get to work on with John is that John's such an amazing writer that he just makes it flow and sing, and it's really he's fun to work with because he's so good at what he does. So that it's always a joy to do that. What's least enjoyable, I think, is that you really, while I always say to try not to be attached to the outcome, I sometimes have to not sometimes. I often struggle to not be attached to every little nuance and point in the story, because I really I have such belief in the message that I just want to make sure it's, and so that can be frustrating, and that can be sometimes be debilitating if you let it be. But yeah, again, because I get to work on these with John, it really makes it a joy.
So in the book, you talked about how great influencers, or you alluded to the fact how great influencers like magnetically attract people to themselves and to their ideas.
Yeah.
How do they do that?
I think you do that to the degree that you focus on bringing value to another human being. With that in mind, let me define what I mean by value too, because I think sometimes, Dr. Ken, the word value is bandied about so much that it's almost like, I don't want to say lost its meaning, but it has so many different meanings to different people. And so it's important to know the difference between price and value, right?
Absolutely.
Price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It is what it is. Value is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, this service, this idea, this concept, this procedure that brings so much value or worth or value to another human being that they will willingly exchange, in this case, their money for this and be ecstatic that they did, while you make a very, very healthy profit. Outside the dental profession, just as an example, if you were to hire an accountant to do your tax return and she charges you $1,000, that's her fee, or literally her price. But what value does she provide in exchange? Well, through her hard work and her knowledge and her study and getting to know you and your practice and what you're looking to accomplish. She's able to save you $5,000 in taxes. She also saves you countless hours of time, and she provides you with the security and the peace of mind of knowing it was done correctly. As we see, first of all, price is finite, but value can be both concrete in terms of that $5,000 savings, but it can also be conceptual in terms of that peace of mind, which is probably priceless as far as that goes. So she gave you well over $5,000 in value in exchange for $1,000 price. She gave you more in value than what she took in payment, so you feel great about it, and she made a very healthy profit, which she should. In fact, in any, again, free market-based exchange where people do so willingly, they're not forced, there are always two profits, the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each of them come away better off afterwards than they were before. And I know there's people watching and listening to this who are in all aspects of the dental profession, but let's just say as a dentist, and let's say you do perform a procedure on someone, They're paying you a certain fee for this. But what are you doing? You're alleviating maybe a pain that they had, a great discomfort. You're making them look better, feel better. They're going to have more energy. They're going to
more confidence.
Have more confidence. They're going to be better with their family. So you're giving them, by the very nature of what you're doing, you're giving them so much more in value than what you're taking in payment. And yet the payment should also be a very, very healthy profit. So again, both parties come out way ahead. So that's what we mean by value. So what we always need to ask ourselves is, how do my customers, clients, patients, what have you, how do they value through what I do? Both intrinsically in terms of the product or service or whatever you provide, but also through that extra that you bring to the table. We say, how do you, because, as technology has leveled off the playing field, right? So things are pretty, much the same in a whole lot of areas. So how do you, and by the way, if a prospective customer, client, patient, what have you, if they cannot distinguish between any two or more providers, they're always going to go with who has the lowest price or fee. Again, that's human nature. And
right.
Unless your last name is, I guess, Walmart or Amazon.com, trying to make low price your unique selling proposition is not a good way to do business.
Death knell for your business, yeah.
Right. No, it's not productive. It's not profitable, and it's certainly not sustainable. When you sell on low price, you're a commodity. When you sell on high value, you're a resource.
Genuine influencers ask, how does what I'm asking this prospect to do align with their goals, with their values and aspirations? How am I making their life better? Having the discipline to put your goals and objectives on the sideline so you can focus solely on helping your prospects get what they want is the key to your success.
So in a commodity-based world, how do you add that additional value? And first of all, it is you who is that additional value. Fortunately, there are dozens, if not hundreds of ways to communicate that additional value, but they tend to come down to 5 what we call elements.
Obviously, we don't have enough time to go over all of them, but let's do this. You talked, element number 1 was mastering your emotions, and this one really resonated with me because I tend to be emotional. So if you could take a minute or two and tell us about that.
Well, and I do too. And it's, again, we're talking about human nature. We are emotional creatures. We'd like to think we're logical, but we're pretty emotion driven. We make major decisions based on emotion, and we back up those decisions with logic. We rationalize, which really means we tell ourselves rational lies. But we act emotionally. Now, with that in mind, we're not saying to deny your emotions or forgo your emotions. What we would say is make sure that you are the master of your emotions as opposed to your emotions being the master of you. In other words, as my great friend, leadership speaker and consultant and author, Dondi Scumaci says, and I love this from her, she says, by all means, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure you are driving the car. In other words, in the book. We can consult our emotions. Sure, they have a lot of value to offer, but make sure it's your logic that is the basis from which you're making a decision. Very important.
So one of the things I also wanted to ask you, I'm a direct response copywriter. That's one of the things that I do primarily now in addition to coaching members. And then I have a few clients. I'm very selective about my clients, kind of like my guests on the show. But one of the things that we're big on when we write copy is this idea of framing. And so in the book, you talked about setting the frame. So from a business standpoint, how relevant and how important is it that we actually set the frame in the context of trying to be the influencer in a given situation, whether it's to try to talk to an employee or try to work with a prospective client? How important is that, and kind of outline that for us?
I believe that setting the frame properly is so important that if you do this, you are 90% of the way to the result you want. So we need to ask, what exactly does it mean? Frame, right? Well, a frame is simply the premise, from the foundation from which everything else takes place. My favorite story about a frame, and this has nothing to do with business, but it has everything to do with business, as you'll see. I was at a Dunkin' Donuts store, and there was a little boy, a little toddler, 2.5, 3 years old. He was running around the store, and his parents called him over to the table. He starts to walk back toward there, and he suddenly slips. He takes a spill on the floor. He falls down. Now, he didn't hurt himself, you could tell, but you could also tell he was very shaken up. Okay, he was very startled. This was not something that was in his experience. So the first thing he does, of course, is he looks over at his mom and dad to get their interpretation of what happened, right? In other words, what happened. He wants to know what comes next. Now, I truly believe that had his parents panicked, gotten upset, oh no, my poor baby, I think he would have started crying, right? But they just handled it so beautifully. They walked over quickly, of course, but very calmly, had a very serene aura about them. They smiled at him. They applauded, and they laughed, and they said, "Oh, that looks like so much fun. What a good trick that was." And immediately the little boy began to laugh. Now, what the parents did is they set a productive frame from which he could operate. So now it wasn't a matter of kind of talking him out of crying or being upset. They set a frame where that wasn't even an issue, right? That's what we can do, and that's what we need to do. That's certainly what you do when you write your direct response copy, is you set a frame. I thought going back to Dr. Cialdini's book on persuasion, which I thought was as good as the original. I thought he did a brilliant job. Everything about that was really about framing.
The secret for greater success in business today is certainly counterintuitive. To the degree that you can learn how to magnetically attract, persuade, and influence prospects, and to the degree that you can learn the art of framing and reframing, which will allow you to consistently pull prospects towards you while avoiding the urge to push them, will determine your ability to survive and thrive during this challenging time.
Now, we also need to be able to reset someone else's negative frame, because when someone is, comes to the table and they're already in it for whatever reason it is, just in a, kind of a way that's not productive. If we buy into that, now we're in a, push versus push kind of situation, and no one, wins in those. So we need to be able to, again, control our emotions, think about it for a moment, and then reset that frame so that we're operating from that win-win mentality.
Nice. You got time for 2 quick questions?
Sure.
Okay, here's the first of the 2 quick questions. What's the best lesson that you ever learned from your dad on being influential?
Oh, something, this one's an easy one. And that is to just genuinely care about that other person. Okay. Definitely to genuinely be interested in that person as a human being. I have found that the most influential and persuasive thing you can ever do. But it's got to come from a place of authenticity.
Absolutely. Okay, here's my last question. What's the one question, and yes, our time was a little bit limited today. That's understandable. But what's the one question today, Bob, that I should have asked you that I didn't?
That would be hard to come up with, because I thought you did a great job. First of all, you made a lot of fun, which is always great, for an interviewee. But no, I thought you covered it very well. Thank you for having me on. It was really quite an honor.
So, Bob, on behalf of myself, certainly want to thank you for doing the show today. I know the members are going to really get a kick out of it, get a lot out of it. Guys, one more time, invest in these books. By investing in the books, I'm telling you, it's going to make a dramatic difference in your ability not only to become influential, but to communicate more effectively and without the stress, the pressure that you feel when you enter into a situation where you're feeling the need, not even feeling the need, where you have the need, where you have to persuade someone, you have to get someone on your side to agree with you, to take the course of action you want, to purchase what you're selling. Whatever it is, it's going to take the pressure off, because it's literally like Bob walks you through, and the co-author with him, John David Mann, correct?
Mm-hmm.
It's like they walk you through and hold you by the hand and pull you into this story. And by the time I would say by the time I was a third of the way through the book, I was like hooked. I couldn't stop reading it. It was that good. It's not a long read by any stretch, but again, brilliant work. I appreciate the work. And thanks for being on the show. I loved having you today. It was great.
Thank you, Dr. Ken. It's my pleasure and honor.
Our objective with this podcast is to help you and your business stand out in the marketplace by crystallizing your messaging, marketing, and communications. On behalf of the whole Ken Newhouse team, thanks for listening.